Lisan, you mentioned the Haitian father, Puerto Rican mother, Brooklyn.
Hmm.
Your last name is Basquiat. Your brother was Jean-Michel Basquiat, who is a cultural icon now, but he wasn't
Yes.
when he died. We and I love that we've reclaimed him, much the way we were talking earlier about Alice Walker reclaiming Zora Neale Hurston, who died and
Hmm.
was in an unmarked grave when she was like, yes, we're going to know this woman.
Hmm.
Tell us about your upbringing, because something went on in that household of four children that produced greatness, not just in him, but in your other siblings as well. Talk a little bit about that and how should we remember your brother?
Hmm. Wow, that's a big question, Karen. Um, well, there were three of us. There were three
Okay.
children. So my
Okay, I'm
parents
sorry.
had a son, Max, a year before Jean-Michel was born, and he was stillborn.
Sorry.
And thank you. And then Jean-Michel was born in 1960, and then I was born 4 years later, and my sister was born 3 years after that. Which is kind of funny because my son once called me and said, "Hold on a minute, somebody said something about a Max. Who's that?" And I had to explain to him what happened. But there were three of us in the household,
Okay.
and we're first generation. So our father immigrated here from Haiti, out of what was going on when Duvalier was in power. There was a lot of political
Papa
strife
Doc
and
or it
Papa
was had to
Doc,
be Papa Doc, right? Okay.
and then Baby Doc. And so there was a lot going on in that country at the time. And my father was really young. And he made the decision with his mom that he wanted to come to this country after his father and his brother was killed. And so my father came to this country, and it's a similar story to a lot of immigrants where he came to this country. He didn't speak the language. He knew nothing about this kind of weather, because he grew up on a tropical island. And he, plopped down into New York City. And the first job that he had was pushing a garment rack down the street of 34th Street, which is the garment center in New York City, or was. And then he and my mother met at a dance, and they shared the love of music, which is kind of a language in itself. And my mother, being Puerto Rican, she knew Spanish, and my father knew Spanish as well. And so we had that. That was the start of our lives as children. Was being the children of this immigrant father and mother who was Puerto Rican, but who was from Brooklyn also. And it was very different, but then also very similar to a lot of experiences for people in Brooklyn.
The 60s, 70s, 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I can't describe it to people who weren't part of that generation, but that generation also, I think, wanted to forget the 40s and 50s, and the early 60s. So they imbued in their children a level of empowerment. I'm black and I'm proud. It was afros,
Mm-hmm.
dashikis. There was the music was all about it was
It was
everything.
good. It
Yes,
was
it was.
good.
It was like almost a glass nose. I don't want to use that term. It was almost like a period of empowerment that we haven't seen since. And a lot of movement happened, not just
Mm-hmm.
the civil rights movement. A lot of movement was going on, and a lot of folk not having it either. People going
Mm-hmm.
fighting and going to jail, and there was a strength to that. Was that in your household? Because your father leaving Haiti, which was under the rule of, I want to say, a CIA implanted government. I said it. All right. And
I heard it.
yeah, how much of Toussaint Louverture and Jean Dessalines, and how much of that was talked about in your home, Jean Jean?
There was a lot of power discussed in our home, just, confidence. We knew who we were. We heard stories about our grandparents and their parents. We were always told that we could do anything. And quite frankly, my father was not from this country. So there were portions of the struggle that was happening in this country that was happening at the same time as my father uh, getting acclimated to the country. So for him, having children and raising them in a completely different environment that he wasn't accustomed to, it created kind of an interesting thing for me, for myself, my brother, my sister, and I, where we were absolutely watching and observing the Black Power movement. We were watching Good Times and all of that. And there was this whole dialogue about Black Power and how, how beautiful we are as a people. And we had this extra layer of not being from this, being raised by someone who is not from this country. So it made it for a really interesting kind of upbringing. But it was really all about, confidence and, knowing where you come from and knowing who you are and going into the world with that.
I'm going to get back to how we should remember Jean-Michel. Is that, what did you call him?
Jean-Michel.
Okay. All right. Y'all didn't have a nickname for him?
No.
Okay.
No,
because do you feel like he's appropriated like not culturally appropriated, but that his art and his memory has been reshaped by hip hop, Jay-Z, who wants to look like him? I think. Do you have connections with them? Like, did he ask permission to look like your brother? I don't know. I have questions.
I hear you. I don't know. I think that people really respect and appreciate Jean-Michel. Jean-Michel was bold as heck, and he said what he had to say about the world and about what he thought about it. And I think that people admire that. I think that people see how revolutionary it was for a man who was at the time 18, 19, 20, 21, like really young, having these very bold opinions about the world and being courageous enough to put those opinions down, documenting them for people to continue to admire, 30 something years later. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because he's my brother, to see how much people embrace him. And at the same time, it's appropriate.
Yes. Okay. In the household, give us a moment that was typical Jean-Michel, your big brother.
Okay. Sundays were like a real chill day at the house. My father would be listening to music. My stepmom
what's
would
playing?
be there.
What's playing? What's the soundtrack?
Probably jazz. Some jazz, or like Shirley Bassey, Lena Horne. There could be some Donna Summer playing, some Diana Ross, all of it. Chicago. And then he'd be making brunch. And we would.
What's on the menu? Come on, don't hold out any details.
Okay, I'm going to say it: eggs Benedict or French toast or something like that. Before eggs Benedict got to be, popular.
Come on, fancy.
I'm just saying, super fancy, super foodie. And Jean-Michel, would just be there with us, right? My sister and I would be playing jacks. Jean-Michel would be, in his room doing something. Drawing.
Was he drawing constantly? Yes.
He was constantly constantly creating something. He was creating all the time, whether it was drawing or whether it was, absorbing books or whatever. His mind was always going. He was a creative person. Yeah, he was in creative energy for sure.